Okay, thanks for coming. Uh, Today we'll be talking about how we are using Qlik Sense for analytics, specifically for our warehouse operation. So one of our biggest warehouse, how they're using Qlik Sense to gain some efficiency by putting analytics in the operations or warehouse processes. This is the agenda for today. We'll just do some brief introduction and then we'll talk about the background. So we'll just give you some context around what the company is, what we do, and what our warehouse operation is, and then what was the need for analytics on the warehouse operation, and how did we go about doing it, and what are the business values or efficiencies we are getting out of it. So Elizabeth will talk about the overall process, how we did it, and then she will also walk you through some of the use cases around like picking and shipping, receiving, all those aspects of warehouse and how these analytics are helping us with gaining a lot of efficiencies in those areas in the warehouse. And then we'll have time for Q&A, but if anybody has any question in between, and if you don't want to wait, just raise your hand and we'll respond to that at the time. So this little bit about me, I don't put like wordings around my things. I just put pictures because I'm an analytics guy. So this is all about me. Okay, I graduated as a mechanical engineer, and I'm an accidental IT guy. I had no interest in IT, but somehow around 1999 I ended up in IT. So my career path is not like a straight road. It's very zigzag. I did like various things which doesn't make sense to anybody. But like I started in sales and marketing. I did it for around 6 years. And then I did some manufacturing. I had my own manufacturing unit. Then I did my family business, which is like trading in iron and steel. At some point, I was also trading in the stock market as a sub-broker for a broker. And then finally, somehow in '99, I ended up in IT. I still not able to figure out how that happened. But I'm using all my experience which I gained in various areas, and that helps me a lot in data and analytics space. Because if you know more about the various aspects of the business, it obviously helps you when you're in data and analytics. So I worked for a company called L&T Infotech. That's my first IT job. I used to write a client-server program, the old gray color screens, which we used to build using Visual Basic. And then I did a lot of business objects when business object was really big at some point. I was a business object consultant. And then I did Crystal Report, and then various other tools in data and analytics, data warehousing, data management. So I worked in various capacities in data and analytics space. Other than my work, I love traveling. I just want to go to places where there are mountains, beaches. I've seen many countries in the world, and there are a lot more on my list to complete before I say goodbye to this world. And then I'm big time into community service, so I volunteer with a lot of organizations. I always believe in giving back to the community, and that's always my passion, to just go out and help people and do some kind of voluntary work other than the work. And I've been Qlik Luminary for the last 4 years, so I don't know how many of you know about Luminary. Every year, Qlik picks about 50 people around the world, and then they call them luminaries. I don't know what that means, but they are calling me that for the last 4 years. So I think it means something. So I'm luminary since 20. This year also I'm a luminary. And God knows, I don't know, maybe next year too. Right now my role in Cummins is more into the data and analytics solution delivery. So we take care of delivering the solutions in data and analytics. My team take care of all the data ingestion and self-service analytics and self-service BI. So that's pretty much my role right now in Cummins. So that's all about me, and I let Elizabeth introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Cornelison. I'm currently a senior business analyst with Cummins-Meritor. My background is not in analytics, if you can tell. I have a master's degree in economics and a BA in economics and management, but I kind of just landed in analytics back in 2012. I was doing sales analytics and I kind of fell in love. And, if I could go back, I'd probably go back and get a degree in analytics. But So that's kind of just about me. What my focus was in sales analytics, but now for the past year and a half, I focused on operations warehouse. And I would say that that's been a huge learning experience for me. It's also kind of taught me what I love to do professionally, which is really build that teamwork and building like communications among teams, because I really think that you get your best analytics from having that like communication with people and having that like and building those communities. So just a little bit about me, fast facts, I guess you could say. I'm a working mom. I have 3 very young kids. You can see some pictures of them up there. One of the things that I really want to do throughout their life is to just teach them how to be healthy, to have these like healthy lifestyles. So what I did yesterday, for example, as I was driving up from Kentucky, is I stopped at the Lake Erie Metro Park. I don't know if any of you guys have been there. If you haven't, it's beautiful. I ran 6 miles because I'm in Taper for a marathon for the Flying Pig. If anybody's been to Cincinnati or heard of it, that's going to be my first marathon. So my next goal after that would be some ultras. I'm looking at the Yamacraw if anybody is in Kentucky. And then, you know, I just really love going to festivals, doing yoga. Next month I'm doing a yoga festival, speaking of, and just taking my kids on adventures, which you can kind of see some of the adventures that we've done here, including Bernheim Forest, which is the Trolls where my kids are at, and the Lantern Festival at the Louisville Zoo. So it's a little bit about me. Thanks, Khuzema.
Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, that's interesting hobby. I could never run actually that much. So my hobby was, I don't know if I mentioned that, my hobby is more around in music. At one point I was a radio jockey. So it just like, I'm too much into like music, singing and everything. So let's talk about what is Meritor. Meritor until last year was an independent company. Meritor is in the business of providing driveline, axles and braking solutions to commercial vehicles. So we make axles, drivelines, brakes, and all these parts for commercial vehicles. So all the big buses, trucks you see on the road, very highly likely chance that the axle is Meritor axle or driveline is Meritor. And we are also into defense and other areas. Last year, Cummins bought us. So we are now a business unit of Cummins, and then we are now called Cummins-Meritor. So Cummins is our company. Meritor is kind of a business unit within Cummins now. And before we were bought, Meritor was a $4 billion business. And this is our product line. So in the truck area, we do axles, drivelines, and axles pretty much for all the verticals. We do like axles for trailers, defense, a lot of off-highway vehicles. If you see like big construction vehicles, we do like axles, drivelines for those, and then also specialty vehicles. And then aftermarket division, which is what we are going to talk about today, that how we are using it in our aftermarket division. And Florence is our biggest warehouse, where Elizabeth comes from. And then that's our biggest warehouse for aftermarket. So we're going to talk about how we are using it in the aftermarket area. So we use Qlik Sense and analytics in all of the area, in all the areas of the company. But today's focus is more about how we are using it in the warehouse for aftermarket. So just give you some background. We started using analytics and Qlik Sense in Meritor somewhere around 2018. And we have been using it in a self-service analytics model. So my team in Meritor, we don't build any dashboard for anybody. We just provide the platform, we provide governance, we provide training. So we are actually enablers. We enable analytics for company, and then our business people, they build their own dashboard. So we enable them with building their own dashboard, so they go about building their own dashboard. So our aftermarket warehouse division, they're one of our customers. So Elizabeth is one of our customers. She builds the dashboard, and we provide everything they need for building the dashboard. Right now we have about 650 users. So we are on Qlik Sense on-prem. It's a client-managed Qlik Sense environment. About 650 users we are having in total in the company. In Meritor I'm talking about. So everything we're talking about is just the Meritor business unit, nothing, not the Cummins in general. And then we have about 120 dashboards and about 40 plus developers who are building the dashboard. And our growth is tremendous, actually. I mean, we are seeing growth like almost from 22 to 20, from 21 coming into 22, we saw almost like 50% growth, almost like 100% actually. We went from 60 dashboards to 120 in 1 year. So that's the kind of usage we are looking at. And a lot of it comes from our aftermarket division. So that's basically in general the background about Qlik Sense and self-service analytics. I'll let Elizabeth do the talking about the whole background on what we are going to talk about, because she can do a pretty good job with that one. So I'll rather shut up and let her speak. So.
Thanks, Khuzema. So prior to Qlik, data for the operations warehouse was very difficult to access. It was part of a legacy reporting software system that was built almost 40 years ago. So it took them hours to pull their data, needed to establish those metrics. It was impossible to calculate even some of the metrics, such as our dock-to-stock metric, because of how they aggregated the data within the reports. So what Qlik has done is that it's allowed us to access our data. The teams were unable to fully understand and trust the logic of that. Sorry, it keeps wandering. But the teams were basically unable to fully understand or trust the logic of those reporting systems because we didn't even know who built them and when. We didn't know what was going into the metrics that we were getting out. And so that was a huge issue that we were having. So with Qlik, we have a lot more trust in our data because the views were built between myself, the IT director, and the senior manager of strategy for operations. There was a lot of discussion that went into that. It was a coordinated effort between several teams. Qlik now allows our business users to access their data very quickly and easily in a timely manner, and they have a lot more trust in their data to allow them to make data-driven decisions. Qlik is updated currently in our environment on a bi-hourly timeline, and if you talk to Bob back here, you'll know I want to get it closer to real time. That's a future project, but the teams have basically seen significant gains in efficiencies from prepping their meetings to managing their teams to having those conversations to prioritizing projects to reducing quality errors. And they've just basically been raving to me about how easy Qlik is to use to grab the information that they need to make the decisions that they need. So before I really go into my apps, I just kind of want to give you some background on what Operations Warehouse is, because when I came in from a sales analytics background, I had no idea what I was dealing with. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about is receiving. This is our receiving floor. Basically, this is where you bring in the packages from your suppliers, they unpack it, they tag the lines, and then they take it back to the warehouse to do putaways. The next department that we'll see is our value-added services, or what we like to colloquially call VAS. We have these automated packaging lines, and basically it's where at the work centers they'll make kits where they take all these different parts and put them together so that it's easy for them to do a brake job or brake pads. So I don't know much about trucking parts. My whole thing is analytics. So what they do here sometimes is a little, but it's really amazing to watch this work. So the final department that I'm really going to be focusing on is our customer operations, or what we like to call COPS. COPS is where we have our pick on foot area, but really what this is from the moment that the customer order has been created or dropped to the floor, we go in, COPS goes in, they pick those parts for that order, they weigh it, they label it, and then they take it over, package it, and put it on a truck and ship it off to the customer. It's really about getting on-time shipping. It's making sure that we're getting the correct parts to the correct people. So this is a flowchart that I put together. It's very basic. This is just to give you an idea of what the apps that I have worked on and how they flow through our warehouse. So as I talk, the blue right here is receiving. It's where you receive or your receipts. Then you lines tagged, you putaways, and then you have what's called these dunnage tasks. So when I talk about dunnage, it's basically there are these pallets back in our warehouse racks that are empty. And we need to go back and we need to grab those down and make space for new parts. So then you have just like that black box areas, your warehouses storehouse location. Those are the racks in the background, the pick on foot areas, which are your high velocity like part numbers. And then it might go to value-added services. That's kind of dependent on what our needs are. It's dependent by basically the planners. And then we go into COPS, which is the orange, and that's what I was talking about regarding the picks, the weigh-in labels, the shuttling, which is the moving from one location to another, loading onto the truck, and then the actual shipping. So then the other one that you might hear me mention is just a replen put away. They own their what's called the pick on foot area, and so they are replenishing that area. It's not something that the receiving department will do. So hopefully I've given you enough context for the apps that I'm now going to talk about. So before I dive into the apps, I really want to spend some time on what the project process was, because the project process that I've taken to build these apps is probably the most important part of this entire project. I mean, it's the reason that these are truly effective apps to my business users. These have not been built in a bubble. And that's like, if there's one thing you take from this, I want it to be that. I'm not just some person developing apps and dropping them into somebody's lap and saying, here you go, like, great, here's your data. These are a whole host of people helping me, from the operations, warehouse teams, the IT departments, the data and analytics teams, and our Chronos or labor management IT teams. And actually several of the people who have helped me develop all of this are in this room. So hi, thank you guys, love you. So when starting this project, I actually spent several months just identifying my internal contacts and shadowing them. I talked to them. I asked them, you know, what metrics are you currently using? What are you currently doing to get to your data? I had them show me how they pulled reports. I shadowed the team leads. I shadowed the people on the floor. I got to know what we were doing. And I think that was key to making sure that I provided them with effective analytics and effective applications that allow them to make data-driven decisions. I learned about current processes, and then I also started attending their daily, weekly, and monthly meetings to really integrate myself in their environment. So once I had a good understanding of what their needs were and how we could best use Qlik to help them, we developed our project plan, identified our resources, and we discussed the best ways to bring the data into Qlik, both from like a performance standpoint, as well as from company practices, because, you know, as much as I'd love to just have real-time data and full access to the production server, that's not going to happen. So it was decided that I would work with our IT director and our senior manager of operations strategy to build these views using SQL inside of Blue Yonder, which is our warehouse management system. While the views were being created and tested, I worked with Bob over here on our data and analytics team to set up the data warehouse tables, which I then would connect to in Qlik. We worked to test the data warehouse tables and validate that the data was pulling correctly, and you know, there's always hiccups. And then I did testing with Bob to make sure that we could do these bi-hourly updates inside of Qlik that would not impact our production servers. And so during that time, we made this decision to really do these siloed apps instead of more of an aggregated executive dashboard. So what you're going to be seeing are these transactional apps that I've provided to the people on the floor. These are not we will eventually get to the place where we're doing executive level dashboarding, but the focus really started with getting the data to the people that needed it the most, and that was the people on the floor. Because right now, or before this, not right now, but in the past, they had no access to data. They were making it based off of gut feeling and or what the managers were telling them they were seeing in the data. So the next step that I did was I also did some training with Khuzema and Michael, who's in this meeting as well, and we really were introducing these teams to just QlikSense as a whole, because they have never seen QlikSense analytics. They've never seen anything like this. So I brought them in to provide an introduction to QlikSense and to provide some data literacy, basically. And as the views became available, that's when I really got to work. And that's where I use the data load editor inside of QlikSense to build the apps, connect fiscal calendars, connect the tables together, and then really build the apps per the requirements that I had identified in the beginning of the project. So in the following slides, I'm going to show you 4 examples of apps that I've built. I've built a total of, I believe, 10. So then the next step was testing and user acceptance. So as we rolled out these Qlik apps, I really engaged with what's called our operational leads and our managers, making sure that they bought into the apps, that they tested and validated the apps for accuracy, and they were deeply influential in how I built the apps and brought them to production. And as they were confident using those apps, that's when we started doing hands-on computer lab trainings with the team leads and the team floor to get them to start integrating it into their daily life as well. So the other thing that was really impactful was having my operational leads who lead each of these departments and their managers going out onto the floor each day and making sure that people were actually bookmarking and saving it and using it in their daily lives. So if you want effective analytics, those are some of the things that you need to do. It's not just the building of the apps in a bubble or the building of the views. It's actually going out and providing that communication with the people who will be using it, and then talking to them. That's the next step that I've been working on, is we do these agile sprints with the leadership. And I use them to update them monthly on where I'm at. Obviously, I'm talking to them more often than just monthly, but these are more formal meetings where I say, you know, each month I say, this is what has been completed. This is what I believe our next priorities are. Do you agree with this? That's where they get to tell me what the iterative updates are or the requests. We use user stories, such as a floor team lead, I want to be able to see the number of picks that I have so that I can make this decision. And these user stories, they really drive how I go forth with developing the next phase of the app. So then finally, I have future projects that are kind of in the far future, my 12-month back pocket, hoping to get to real-time data, looking at you, Bob. And but also things like we are eventually going to get to a leadership app, which will have all of this information that I have in these siloed views in one app where we aggregate up to just that metric. And I'm hoping to use some stuff that I learned last week at QlikSense, Qlik World, where I will be doing some app chaining, fingers crossed, where they will have a seamless user experience. And then finally, we will also be expanding, the goal is to expand to other facilities for the aftermarket in the US and Mexico. With all that being said, let's get to the apps. So the first one I want to talk to you about is the PICS aftermarket COPS or customer orders application. This is just some information on it, but I will show you what this actually looks like. So this is the first app. It provides transactional details on picks for customer operations. And right now, the people who are most using this are the managers, operational leads, and the team leads. And they're able to drill into the type of picks, the location of those picks in the details table, as well as in the pivot table. And then they can then look at the number of picks by tick types in this pie chart, and we've actually made decisions here on how to prioritize projects to increase efficiency. When we're looking at it, you can see that you might not want to do a project on a top reach. It's like 1% of our picks. It doesn't make sense to do that. What we might want to focus on is our picker trucks, because that's 64% of how we do our picks. They're able to then see at a very quick glance the number of picks that we've had, how many replan picks, the cancel picks, and the unpicks. And then they can dig into these details. So depending on, if you're a team lead and you only are managing people doing picker trucks, you're not going to need to see all this other information. So you can just click over here on picker trucks, and then it'll bring up all of the information regarding, what's canceled, what's cartoned, how are we doing on this data. And if they need to drill down, they can also drill down into the details table here, which provides information such as how much time it takes to pick in between picks. Like, so are you sitting around and chatting? Are you just sitting on your truck and not doing your work? Hopefully that's not what's going on. Hopefully you're diligently doing it, but it allows for them to manage their labor workforce. And we've seen some efficiency improvements within the time it takes to pick, as well as the time it takes between picks. So that's been a huge improvement for us here. The other use that we have with this one is actually the quality department has their own sheet within this app. It allows them to see the number of picks and then compare it to their errors report chart, or their errors reports, their error data. And we've actually seen a decrease by, I believe, about 15% errors, number of picks in the past year. So the second app is this on-time shipping app. Again, here's some quick information that I'm going to go through it. So let me just go ahead and show you what the apps look like. So I have two. I have what's called just our metrics overview, and this is just a very quick at-a-glance dashboard that they can pull up, and they can see how many RDCs are past due, and it turns red. How many OEs, how many dealers, how many order lines do we have that are past due that we need to focus on and prioritize? Then we also have our current past due data, our current data, which says, these are the number of orders that we have today that need to get out of the door. The reason that the tomorrows are all zero, our orders don't drop until 4:30. I didn't take this screenshot at 4:30, so you will never see tomorrow orders except between 4:30 p.m. and 12 a.m. when they become current orders. This has allowed our team leads to know where to look. What do I need to prioritize? So then they can go to the next sheet, and they can quickly see at a glance, just with the visuals, how many of these past due orders are in our ready status and how many are in process. If it's in ready status and it's past due, that's not a good thing. We don't want to see that. It means we have not started working on it yet. So when they see something like 67.9% isn't ready, that should flag them, okay, we need to go down and see what orders are in ready and what do we need to focus or prioritize for today. So this has been hugely helpful. We only just introduced this app within the past month or two. I believe it was back in the end of March, actually. And we already have over 150 sessions that have been logged since the end of March. So that's considering that the team is, you know, I believe I have, let me go back real quick. Yeah, I have 12 unique users. So between the team leads, the OLs, and the managers, and I have 150 sessions for this on-time shipping app. This has been hugely helpful. They've raved about this app, how much easier it is to get to the details that they need in a timely manner, because before, what was needed to do to get any of this information is that they had to drill down to, I want to see past dues for just OEs, or I want to see past dues for just RDCs. So now they can say, I want to see all of this information. And then just some of the efficiency gains that we've seen is we've seen an increase in quality for customer shipping orders shipped out on time. It's gone up, so. Okay. The next app that I would like to talk about is based around receiving. This is for the lines tagged Putaway and Dunnage. And I actually took 3 views, SQL views, and combined these, or I took 3 tables and combined them together. They're disparate data, which I know Michael has warned me against, but it's working out so far. And basically this app, let me get into the first one. This is the yesterday's overview. This one sheet has taken time from prepping for meetings from an hour and a half to 2 minutes. It used to take him an hour and a half, my operational lead for receiving, to go into all of the different legacy reportings that I mentioned in the beginning and grab all of the different details, put them all into different Excel spreadsheets and collate all that information to get to these metrics. He can now see all of this in a click. It's fantastic. He raves to me all the time about how much he's able to save and how much he's able to like actually do his work versus trying to just pull reports. So this is the next sheet with this lines tagged. I also have this for lines tagged Putaway and Dunnage. It allows them to go in and see how are their users doing. Are their users doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they picking the number of lines tagged? Or are they tagging the number of lines that we expect them to be tagging in the hours that we expect them to be tagging them in? And if not, then we can go into this details table and really see why not, or it generates that conversation. And so this has been hugely helpful in having labor management conversations, leading employee reviews, and then also just understanding like what the different shifts are doing. The other use case, I don't have a screenshot of it, but the Dunnage, it allows them to see where do they need to go within the warehouse to clear out these Dunnage locations, and then also do they need to shift from tagging to putaways, or from putaways and tagging, do they need to shift over to Dunnage and clean out some space to make room for them to do putaways. And then the final app, don't have a lot of information on here, but that doesn't mean it's not a hugely impactful app. This was actually one of my first apps that I published, but because of the manager who I worked with to develop this went to a different department, I found out it had not been used, or it had not been utilized and sent to the floor in the manner that I thought it had. So I got involved this past March, and this one is now my most used app within the past month. It went from no usage at all to, I believe it was 23 unique users with over 285 sessions. So what this app is it's basically telling them in the value-added services where they have those different lines, how old is your work order? Which for us, it's very important that we get these things out on time. You don't want to have work orders just sitting, waiting around, having been printed off, told that they needed to do it, and then it not be worked on. So the goal is to have it under 5 days. The next goal is 7 days. And what we've seen is actually a drastic decrease from 7 days to under 7 to 5 days, basically. It allows the team leads, the people who are actually running those work centers, those 28 work centers that I mentioned, to come in and they can click on. So right now I have it in work centers. They can say, well, I own the Loki, Thor, and Odin work centers, and I just want to see those 3. So they click on those, and it tells them exactly how many work orders are older than 7 days, how many are older than 5 days, and then they can go into the table to see more details regarding that information. They're able to see what the part number is, how many cartons there are, and some details into that. Before, they had to run an access report, and they had to ask their manager to run that access report for them. So now, they just go back to their computers, click a button, and here it is. And this one is actually updated hourly. So we've seen some incredible efficiency gains, and just the comments that come out of this of how much easier it makes life to be able to have this information. So kind of in conclusion, these are the other apps that I've worked on, inclusive of the ones that I've talked to you about. If there's any questions on them, I can kind of go into details, but really in conclusion is that we've been able to drastically reduce the time spent working on just pulling in data and churning out reports, and instead really allowed our operational teams to have access to that transactional data that they didn't have access to before. Are there any questions?
So thanks, Elizabeth. I think this by far the best use of analytics in Meritor we have seen. The aftermarket is like one of our biggest users of analytics. And then on the warehouse efficiency, that's probably the most, I think, value-added business case we have for analytics in Meritor. But other than this, actually, now we are seeing a shift in the use of analytics. Earlier, it used to be like executive dashboards for like the C-level executives and management. But now we are seeing more analytics down to the people who really need to have those analytics. So this is one best example how we are using it in aftermarket. Another one which I just want to throw in here, it's not relevant to aftermarket, but it's like how we are using it on the shop floor. So many of our sites now, they are using these analytics and they are refreshing the data almost like near real time, like every 15 minutes they are looking at what is my production status, what is my WIP going on, and how is my machine downtime happening. Okay, so all these data we are tracking now on the site. So OE is one of the big thing, right? Okay, what is my operating equipment efficiency, right? So they're tracking it on a very regular basis, like every 15 minutes, we are refreshing these dashboards and giving them that data which basically people on the line need. It's not for the management to look at, but for people on the line, they're looking at it and they're making decisions quickly right there, then and there, based on what the data is telling them. What is my production status, if I'm in line with my target for the hourly production, if my downtime is in line, if it is causing me like what my like equipment change is causing the downtime, is it in line with what we want it to be, or is it like more or less or whatever. So they're making all of these decisions now in close to near real time, like almost like in every 15 minutes, half an hour, they are looking at this information and they are making the decisions now. So that's kind of a shift now happening that in the use of analytics, that it's more on the lines, more for the people who actually need the data-driven decision making rather than at the management level. So this another use case I just wanted to throw in here. So any questions, anything, if anybody have? Yeah. I'll give you this.
Yeah, I'm not looking for a mud throwing contest here, but you mentioned that there's a director of IT. This is a massive organization. They must have already had a need for or a use case of reporting, maybe dashboarding, and then at some point in time, you or the team that brought in Qlik comes in with a little bit of a restriction. You've got 2-hour delays on data caching and things like that. Where did, what was the need for bringing in this extra service that could provide, that needed headcount to build up this whole team to deliver these dashboards and information when an existing team maybe could have done the same thing, maybe could have taken longer. I don't know the complexity, but what were some of these driving factors for why? Why any of this versus what could have likely been in place?
Yeah. So I think we have our aftermarket division is pretty unique in some ways that we have an analytics team sitting in aftermarket for quite some time. So before even we started ClickSense and everything, they already had a team which take care of all these needs for the warehouse. And there was a lot of these things going around, the warehouse modernization and those kind of efforts going on. So that team was very instrumental in putting all this together. And since it was that one team which was taking care of most of this stuff, it was not that difficult for them to spin into this area and take up these projects. So that made it easy for them. They did not have to go out and look for other people or hire more people to do this because they already had a team built in the aftermarket division. But in other areas, yes, I mean, there was some challenges around, hey, maybe we wanted to spin up some of these analytics, like for example, on the shop floor. I mean, there were no people on the shop floor to do these things for them, right? And ours is a self-service model. Anytime somebody comes to me and say, hey, we need a dashboard, I would just say, oh, I cannot build it for you, or my team cannot do it for you. We'll just enable it, you make it. So there were some challenges on the other side, but for aftermarket, we were lucky in that way that they already had that team, that already had their structure, but that structure is now falling through in other areas. So like manufacturing now has their own people who are building dashboards for them for the shop floor. So that not every site, but there is a centralized team. They are building dashboards for various sites. So that's kind of like a reuse kind of concept. Build for one site, use it for another one. So that's the kind of concept going on right now. Did I answer your question? Okay. You want to add something?
Yeah. So just to add some details from the aftermarket area as well, is that we're kind of our own business. Like we operate in our own bubble. And the director of IT, he has, I believe, 2 or 3 people under him who know the data, not quite as well as he does. He has a lot of pulls on his time. There's a lot of projects that need to be prioritized. And I know when I met with Robert, our director of operations, warehouse operations, he had been seeing a lot of what we'd been producing for sales, the sales team, and the product marketing team and the finance team. And he wanted to be able to easily provide dashboards that can be used by anybody. And a lot of what we had was, so that legacy software, SpyView, is what we were using, or that they were using. It was only updating once a day. And there was just not the priority to really get away from that. They were working on implementing Blue Yonder, getting away from a different WMS system. We have other priorities throughout that IT was really focused on. So our team was able to step in and say, we can help with this. And we use Qlik instead of Tableau or BI. And Qlik has provided some ease of use. There is ways to get towards real-time data, but that's just a restraint that has been put in place on us. And hopefully one day they'll let me get towards that real-time data. So.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? Yeah.
First of all, I'm very impressed with what you put together. And one thing I was really interested in is you talked a lot about your usage and your audience. You had X number of users with X number of sessions. Can I ask a little bit about like how you use that to like kind of, is that like a good metric of like the potential value of your work? And what's the risks with that?
So I use it pretty sparingly, I will be honest. I think it's extremely useful to understand who was using it. And actually, that's a data and analytics, I almost said DNA, a DNA team tool that we use. And it really just allows us to see, are the people that we built this for using the apps that we built it for? It just provides us with some feedback as to where do we need to focus our efforts. So if I went in there and it was just me using it, then I failed. And so that's really why I wanted to kind of highlight that, is that, you know, we have unique users who are using it. These are actually the people on the floor using it. It's not just my team and some, you know, people up in the office saying that we're using it. And so that to me provides that information. And then I'm also providing that details to like the executive leadership as well, so that they know that, you know, the money that they're investing with my team to build these apps is actually being well used.
Yeah, and we also have built one dashboard, and we call it dashboard of dashboard. So what that does actually, it gives you usage details for all 120 dashboards we have. So and it's available to everybody in the company. Anybody can go and see, hey, how my dashboard is being used, or what is the usage of this dashboard. So for, as Elizabeth said, for the line manager, they can go and check, hey, this dashboard which we have put together, how many people on the line are using it? If they're not using it, then they can drive the usage from that. And then they can have that conversation about, okay, so we give visibility to everybody in the company about the usage of the dashboard. That's not hidden with anybody. You can go and check how many people are using. We'd go down to the level where it will show you how many sessions you logged in. And then within a session, what did you did? How many filters you selected? What sheets you went to? What objects you selected? So you can see that, okay, somebody is not just going in and out. You just open the dashboard to record your usage. That's not going to work. So we just give you all the details. So that's a separate dashboard which we have built for people to have that visibility into the usage of the dashboard.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you find, or is it your perception that it ever drives less efficient analytics? So that's a concern that we have. You know, are we designing a report that, you know, a person needs to go in and manually look at something constantly? Is that like rewarded with these KPIs?
So, yeah.
I honestly look at it maybe once every 2 weeks.
Okay.
It's not something that I'm using it to drive conversation.
Okay.
So when I go and talk to the OLs about usage, it's something that I'll go in really quickly. I mean, you know, I'll go in and it'll take me 2 minutes to say, okay, I have 18 unique users for the past 30 days. I've had X number of sessions. The average was maybe a minute and 30 seconds. If I'm seeing where it's an average of 7 seconds, that's going to raise a flag, which will then drive that conversation. I'm not, per se, like spending all of my time worried about what that usage dashboard's telling me. It's more a tool that I use to drive conversation. And if there's anything you get from this is conversation. It's so important to have that conversation to build those effective analytics.
And I think to answer your question about less effective analytics, yeah, we run into those situations sometimes. I mean, we build something and then we figure out, okay, hey, it's not being used, or it's not useful actually. It's more than used, it's whether it's effective or useful or not. And we have seen it a lot that we put something together, then people look at it, they will go back and change it. So it's an iterative process, right? It's kind of a agile methodology. We just put something out there, let users use it, let them educate the developer who is building it what they need. So we always go back and change. And we have that whole change management process where you can track every changes was made in the dashboard. So you can go back and look at, hey, how it is started. So you can actually look at the journey of a dashboard, that how it is started and how many changes were made. And you can align your usage with that changes, and you can see that in that perspective, that, hey, how we are turning it from an ineffective analytics to an effective analytics. So we have that process and that use cases too. I think you have something. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. What does your dashboard and app deployment process look like to your end users? Like, do you put any sort of training materials together, like a video walkthrough, and how do you answer their questions on how to actually utilize the dashboard? Or is it just kind of a deployment and then just let them figure it out type of process?
So, yeah. So I'll take the initial part on that one. I wish I had a session, separate one for the whole analytical process, the self-service process. So we have a very well-defined self-service analytics process, and then we have a process where users will make, a developer will make the change. We have the whole migration process. We track what changes were made and everything, as I talked about. You can track the changes, you can see it, and now that the thing is, once we put it into the production, there is also a process for basically adoption, right? So we do training. So we have done many like user trainings where we will go and teach our users how to use the dashboard. Because building a dashboard and throwing it out is one thing, but then telling people how to use it is another thing. So then Qlik has its own flow of the information, its own GUI interface, and people need to be aware that, okay, how do I this, right? So then we do that kind of training for people to make them aware. So that's for the tool adoption point of view. But then like the aftermarket division, they do their own training for people to explain what this dashboard does, what are these KPIs means, how can you use it, so that's kind of thing. So that process is still there. So I'll let you edit, Elizabeth, if you want.
So for this project specifically, the first step that I did was back in September when I was starting to roll these out to the main floor. I brought in Khuzema and Michael to do just a very high-level overview introduction to what is Qlik, how do you use it, what are the capabilities of it, and we had a lot of Q&A with that. We had a lot of conversations. I think we did four different meetings with different teams. And then as I rolled out and as I worked on each of these apps, I worked very closely with the managers and OLs. I had weekly meetings with each department where I was going through, this is what I'm doing. I gave them access within UAT and development to be able to get in before I published it, and really had their buy-in, and that was really important. Was to get the buy-in of the OLs, especially because they're the ones who are kind of that in-between between leadership and the floor. And then after I had their buy-in, saw them using it consistently, that's when we started bringing in the team leads, and then also the team, like the team people underneath the team leads. I actually brought them into our computer lab, had them log into their user profile, had them get on to Qlik, make sure they understood how to get there, and then had them follow me while I was walking through. We talked about use cases for it. We did things like, for example, that age work order report that I showed. Thor and Loki was one of the team leads who I love that name, the Thor and Loki. So we used Thor and Loki as an example, and he was actually able to say, "Whoa, there's something going on here today. Like, what does this? How do we look into this?" And so that kind of sparked a lot of conversation, and that's what I was aiming for, was to have that hands-on in the computer lab. I didn't want to just be talking at you. I wanted you to be engaging with me. So I found that extremely helpful. And then after that, the next step that was extremely important was having the managers and OLs walk to their desks each day, make sure that they had it bookmarked, make sure that they were logging in. Hey, have you checked Qlik today? Have you seen, what's your metrics? What's going on your line? What's going on here? And just kind of engaging them with that, asking them for information on that. So it's a process.
So anybody else? I think we can just do one more question if anybody has any question. If not, then we are still here. You can come to us and we can talk more about it. If we are already over, we don't want to be between you and your lunch, so we just call it off. So thanks for coming. Really appreciate. Provide us the feedback if you have any, or maybe if you want to collaborate and talk about how you are using analytics in your warehouse environment or any other environment. We'll be more than happy to do any collaboration on that one and talk more. Okay. Thank you.